Hi, my name is Amar, and I'm here with Jennifer, who is an estate planning attorney.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're going to talk about specifically what does an executor to do in estate planning. And so, Jennifer, you want to start with just a quick summary of what an estate planner does?
What an estate planner does, or what
No,
an
no, sorry. What an
so
executor does. What are the responsibilities of an executor?
okay. So I was like, I can talk for a long time about what an estate planner does.
Yeah.
So what an executor does is essentially that's the person who is responsible for managing and distributing the assets in a decedent's estate. It's different from a trustee who's the one in charge of managing and distributing the assets under a trust. So this does have to do only with the deceased person and only assets that are in that deceased person's name, individual name. Sometimes it requires a formal probate administration. Sometimes, depending on the size of the estate, the type of assets, you can pass them without a formal probate administration. But assuming, for our purposes today, there is a formal probate administration, the executor needs to figure out any documents that are out there. So, a will that is in existence. They don't necessarily need to know if a trust is in place, but really, if there's a will and if there wasn't a will, that's okay. But really, going through the decedent's records to figure out what estate planning documents they have in place. And then they need to file actually a formal probate petition with the court in order to get appointed. So with executors, you really have no authority until you've been appointed by the court, or if the estate is a small enough value where you can take control just with a real simple document. So first thing is file that petition with the court. Once you're appointed as an executor, then you're kind of off and running as far as the administration period. But it's a very court regulated and code regulated process. So unlike a trust, which is controlled by the trust asset or the trust document, an executor is really controlled by the probate code and is really quite strictly monitored by the court. So you file an initial petition. You have to get all the assets inventoried and appraised. Typically, the court will appoint a referee who's going to be charged with valuing all the assets. You need to file a publication in order to give notice to all creditors. Those two steps are normally done right at the beginning of a probate administration so that you can get that clock moving forward so that you're at a point in time where you can distribute the assets. Once you've given that notice, once all the assets have been inventoried and appraised, and you can do that in separate tranches. So you don't have to all do it all at once. So you can submit various inventories and appraisals. So once the court is aware of what are the decedent's assets, are there any documents in place like a will, or do they not have a will? And the creditor period has passed, so there's no creditors or liabilities out there, then you need to file a final or a closing petition at that point in time. So that creditor period normally takes 120 days. So that's the period where you're doing kind of all the initial work. And then after that period expires, you can file that final petition. The reason why here in California we tend to try very hard to avoid probate administrations is even though that process sounds pretty easy, you file a petition with the court, you get everything appraised, you wait the 120 days, file a final petition. The timing of all of that, as far as when you file the petition and when you get a court hearing, is very much dependent on the court's calendar and how busy they are. So sometimes you're ready to open a probate or you're ready to close a probate, and you won't get a hearing date for 3 to 4 months after you file that petition. So
Yeah.
it does really slow and delay the process. And as an estate planning attorney, I've always cautioned clients about that. Even a very, very straightforward probate administration, there's only one beneficiary, and they're the executor. The assets are really simple, cash and maybe a piece of real property. Everything was done in a timely fashion. Even those probates take about a year, year and a half to complete. So
This is crazy.
It's an involved process.
Yeah.
And COVID is a perfect example of how sometimes that can be even delayed even further, because we had our court system closed for about 3 months. So I had at least 2 petitions that had been filed with the court. We were waiting for our hearing date, and that was right when the court closed down. So these people cannot act or proceed or take control or marshal any of the decedent's assets until they're appointed. So we were essentially, they were frozen in time. They had rental payments. They were trying to manage the decedent's estate. It was just terrible. So it creates a lot of problems. Same with the closing. You file a closing petition. Everything's frozen at that point in time. You've already confirmed to the court, these are the assets, these are the expenses. There shouldn't be any other activity going on. But if you don't get a hearing date for another 5 months after that, it can be very difficult to continue to manage and administer the estate. So we try, again, very hard here in California to avoid that. You also are charged potentially with having to provide an accounting to the court. Sometimes that can be waived by the beneficiaries, which is what we try and do. But if you're required to provide an accounting to the court, that is very detailed and very regulated by the probate code as well. What are assets on hand at the beginning, what's coming in, what's going out, and I mean like very, very detailed. Any interest, any sales, any distributions, all of that needs to be reported on a single accounting document to the court. So that document, in addition to the closing petition, can require a lot of work as well. So again, we try very hard here in California to get the beneficiaries to waive that formal accounting. But an executor needs to keep really good records and track of all of the assets in the event they do have to file an accounting with the court. They also need to file the decedent's final income tax return. Hopefully not an estate tax return, but definitely a final income tax return. And that's another one of the items that they need to include on that final closing petition, that all taxes have been paid and everything is handled with respect to the decedent's estate.
And do most people that serve as an executor, because I'm thinking like I'm the executor for my mom's estate, and it's so most people it's just their adult children that serve in that role, and sometimes they may be in the peak of their careers, they're busy with their families. So do they outsource any of this work to other professionals?
Yes. So they can absolutely, they can hire an attorney, hire an accountant. They probably should be doing all of that in any event. They can hire a bookkeeper to help them with the accounting. These days, you really don't even need to appear at all at any of these various court hearings. So yeah, getting an attorney, getting an accountant, touching base with the financial advisor, making sure we're doing everything properly as far as the estate financial accounts. And then you can potentially get a bookkeeper as well. Executors are also entitled to compensation because it is work that's involved. And that's not on an hourly basis. It's actually based on the fair market value of the estate that's included in the probate. So an executor will get compensated as well. Attorney's fees are calculated the same way. It's based on a fee schedule based on the fair market value of the assets, not on the hours spent doing the probate administration.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're listed as an executor and you have questions about this responsibility, reach out to Jennifer and and get some guidance there, because this, there's a lot of I would say nuances that, getting the death certificates as well as notifying, beneficiaries as well as creditors and so on and so forth. And following that process could smooth and speed things along. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it below. Please hit the like button, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Yeah.